Hello everyone from Hong Kong. This year on Raksha Bandhan, I'm really excited to be reading from my latest book, Amma, Tell Me About Raksha Bandhan. And I have a copy of it right here, and you can see Klaka and Kiki, the two characters, and they're here along with their cousin Maya, who comes to celebrate Rakhi with them. So let's get started. As you can see here, Klaka and Kiki have gone with their Amma to the bazaar, and they've actually gone to buy a gift because Rakhi is the next day and Maya's coming home, and they can see lots of exciting things. They can see lots of Rakhis. Some of them have a Spider-Man, some have Superman, then there's a Ganesha Rakhi, there's a Krishna Rakhi. So they finally buy their gifts for their cousin. They buy some books and candy. And the next morning, they get up, they get ready in time, and they're eagerly awaiting for Maya to come home. And you can see the gifts are wrapped and ready, and there are some sweets on the table. And finally, the doorbell rings, and Maya comes. And she's a little bit shy at first, but it doesn't take her long to start mingling around with her cousins. And they even have a selfie moment. And then, of course, comes the ceremony of tying the Rakhi, where Maya ties the Rakhi and, gives the boys sweets. They feed each other and they give her the gifts. And after that, as all three of them are huddling with Amma on a couch, they ask Amma, what does Raksha Bandhan or Rakhi mean, and why is it that a sister ties Rakhi on a brother? And so the mother explains that Raksha means to protect and Bandhan is really a bond. So it's a bond of love where you love and protect each other. And they're quite curious about how it started. And she says, think of it as trying a friendship band. And it's not only a sister that you can tie a Rakhi to, you can tie a Rakhi to a friend, a mother, a neighbor. She tries to tell them all this. And then they want to know the story. So she says there are actually three stories relating to Raksha Bandhan. And they're very excited because, of course, the more the number of stories, the better it is. So the first story is about Bali. Now, as some of you may know, Bali was a very generous king. But he also became very arrogant and he wanted to conquer the whole world. And you can see him here. He's conquering land after land. And people got really fed up and tired. And then they complained to Vishnu. And Vishnu was a bit sad. He said, I thought Bali was very generous. Now I'm hearing that he's actually become very greedy, so something needs to be done. And Vishnu says, leave it to me. I'll see how I can help. And there you have Bali in his court, and he's doing what is called a yagna because he wants to get even more powerful. And while this ceremony is going on, into the palace walks in this really short man. And Bali is a bit surprised. He says, hello, who are you? And he says, well, I was just passing by and I've heard of your generosity and I've heard that you don't say no to anything and I wanted to ask you for something. And so the king says, what is it that you want? And he says, I want land which is equal to the 3 steps that I take. And Bali says, oh little one, are you sure? Because your feet are so tiny, your land won't be able to cover much. Ask for something else. Ask for gold, ask for silver. And then this small man, he says, don't think that because I'm small, I'm not powerful. Let me just take the 3 steps that I want and I'll be happy with that. So Bali says, so be it. And then, of course, he takes the first step and he starts growing and growing and growing. And his first step, as you can see, covers the earth. The second step covers the entire galaxy. And then the third step, he has no place to put. So he looks at Bali and he said, you promised me 3 steps. Now, where do I put the third one? By this time, seeing his size, Bali has recognized and realized this can be nobody else than the great god Vishnu. So he says, Vishnu, I realize my mistake and I know it's you. Please forgive me and you can place your foot on my head. So actually, Vishnu is very, very happy to hear this and to see that Bali is actually wants to atone and make amends for what he's done. So he says that, why don't you ask me for the one thing that you want? I'm really pleased with your answer. And so Bali says, what I really want is for you to stay with me in my palace and let me spend some more time with you, which is fine. So Vishnu starts staying with Bali. But Lakshmi, as you know, is married to Vishnu and she's missing him now. And she's like, where's my husband? And she realizes he hasn't come back. So she comes down to earth and goes to Bali's palace and she ties a thread on Bali's wrist saying, Bali, you're my brother now. And so Bali says, what can I give you in return? And she says, well, for starters, my husband. And then Bali folds his hands and he said, I realize I've kept him for too long And I've realized my mistake as well. And then Vishnu returns with Lakshmi back, and Bali realizes that life's greatest treasures are not the things that you acquire, but the love and the relationships that you build. So this was the first story, and after it finished, Klaka and Kiki like, we want more, we want more, we want the second story, and we want the third story. Now the second story has to do with Indra, and as many of you will know, Indra is the lord of the skies. So Indra is in battle against the demons, and he's losing. And this is his wife Sachi here, who's really worried. And she goes to a sage saying that Indra is losing in the battle, and I really fear for his life. What can I do to protect him? And the sage tells her, why don't you take a thread and you tie it around his wrist, and that'll protect him. And that's what she does. And the next day, lo and behold, Indra and his army have renewed vigor, they fight hard, and they win the battle. So after Klaka, Kiki and Maya hear the story, they ask Amma that, but how can a thread help you win a war? How can a simple thread help you achieve anything? So Amma goes to explain to them that it's not the thread that does anything by itself, but it is really the love of somebody who cares for you that makes you fight harder, that gives you the faith that you will be successful, and that makes you persevere. So that's what it does. So they're thinking about that, and then Amma says, well, there is a third story. And this is very interesting because I didn't know this story either till I started researching about Raksha Bandhan. And this story has to do with the great poet, writer, freedom fighter, Rabindranath Tagore. So in 1905, the British wanted to divide Bengal into two parts. And Rabindranath Tagore got everyone together, the Hindus, the Muslims, and they all tied Rakhi to each other. It was like a brotherhood. And together, the entire community resisted the British dividing into India, and the British actually had to cancel their plans to divide Bengal. And so this is actually a true historical story, and it shows how Rabindranath Tagore used the power of community and of brotherhood and sisterhood to prevent this from happening. So Amma ends the story by saying, Klaka and Kiki and Maya, I hope that you realize that there are going to be some sunny days and there are going to be some rainy days. But I hope that you're going to be together with each other through it all. And that's what the true meaning of Raksha Bandhan really is. So this was the story of Raksha Bandhan. And, I started the Amma Tell Me series 10 years back, inspired to tell my two children about all the festivals I grew up celebrating and the stories that I had grown up hearing. And, with the love and affection of the people, the series has now grown to 12 titles. And they're here, they're available on Amazon in the US and in India. And recently I started a new series with Penguin. And this is a travelogue of a mother and a kid to places in India. So I've actually traveled with both my kids and my husband to these places. And they're based on the conversations that I actually had with them and the questions they asked. So there's one on the Golden Temple, Tirupati, there's one on Dargah of Salim Chishti, and also in Shirdi. And if any of you are planning to travel to these places, we don't know when that will happen because of COVID, but hopefully at some point. I do hope you buy the books and that you find them useful. And I feel as an author, my job would be done then. Thank you so much, and happy Raksha Bandhan. Happy Raksha Bandhan.